Olá, boa tarde a todos, muito obrigada pela presença. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Reitoria Digital e Pro-Reitoria de Extensão e Cultura da Universidade Federal de Goiás, Mississippi State Universrity e Universidad del Atlántico, com apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa Além de Mim, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Sebba e Amira Nunes. Nossa proposta é levar a todos os interessados assuntos relacionados à importância da arte e seu papel na sociedade. The Piano and its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts Digital Department and Provost of Culture of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidad del Atlántico and Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Sebba, and Yamira Rodrigues Nunes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all of those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. Thanks so much to all of you for the audience. And the interview today will be Dr. Rosângela Sebba, Head of the Piano Department, Mississippi State University. Welcome, Dr. Sebba and Dr. Sarah.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and interview Sarah Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins serves as faculty member at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She's a PhD candidate at Louisiana State University, where she also received her master's degree. And she teaches group piano, and she's a collaborative pianist as well at Southern University. And she has a very active and important role at the Piano Magazine in NCTM, where she is the advertiser manager, as well as she has been a conductor and choral director at 2 churches in Louisiana. So Sarah has a very broad career so far. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So Sarah, it's nice to see you, and it's nice to see your career being so broad at the same time developed so quickly. You have been extremely active and busy, as I know. But first of all, as always, we start with when all begins. So when did you begin studying piano?
I was in 3rd grade, so I was around 8 years old. And the year prior, I had taken dance lessons, as many young girls do. And my music teacher at school said, I'm taking new students in my piano studio. Are any of you interested? My parents said, you have to choose. If you want to start piano, you have to let go of dance. And that was the easiest decision I've ever made, and one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I've been playing piano for the last 20 years.
So it's a little different in South America, especially, and in Europe as well, that music is not always offered in schools, and especially in public schools. So we usually go to a conservatory, or usually you go to a private teacher and you start. Tell us a little bit about the educational system in the United States.
Absolutely. So at the very least, between 5 years old and approximately 10 or 11, so that's K through maybe 5th grade in school, there are weekly, if not bi-weekly, music classes. This is taught by a general music teacher. They might learn an instrument, but it's primarily learning musical concepts, being able to sing together, drum circles, that type of musical interaction and engagement. And I was very fortunate that my elementary school music teacher was extremely active and passionate about what she did, and inspired me to learn more about music as I grew older.
So in that case, you started in I think in South America, we call this musicalization, where you start general idea of music. And then when they decide about which instrument, do they, what time in their studies is that?
That generally starts around middle school. This is specifically in the southern United States. Sometimes that will start a year or two prior in the northern states. I started band actually in middle school. I played flute and oboe for over 10 years. I will say, as someone who had piano lessons for several years prior, I had a leg up over my classmates that I could already read music. So I just had to focus on making my flute work. So I was about 12 years old when I really started to get into choosing my own instrument within the school setting. Of course, I had chosen piano prior.
And so in that case, for example, I remember, when I go to schools, and I remember that students will learn basically how to feel the pulse, how to understand music notation. And in the case of the band, so how does that work? Do they select an instrument, or the band director select an instrument for the student? And how is the teaching part of it?
It varies from program to program. I was offered the opportunity to test out many instruments. I knew going in that I wanted to play flute. It just had it in my head. That's what I wanted to do. So I was a little stubborn in that I refused to try any other instrument. But the directors had certain criteria that they were looking for in students. So, maybe the lip shape, the hand size, that type of thing. However, it's not going to limit a student from choosing an instrument that they want to play. It's just guiding criteria to help them be the best musician they can be on that instrument.
Okay. So you took piano lessons outside the school. Am I correct about that? Okay. Yes. So tell me more about your experience as a young musician, because one of the things that I'm noticing more and more is that students will take piano lessons, and then when they go to high school, when the activities become a little bit broader and more options, and they get busy, and they are also preparing to go to university, they drop at the time, or they continue in a smaller emphasis. And then when they go to university, they decide, well, okay, I'm going to be biochemistry, a mechanical engineer, because music has no career. That's usually what we hear all the time. So tell me more about your experience and your choice of becoming a music major and now a professional musician.
Absolutely. It is funny to me that you put it that way, because that is exactly what happened to me. I took piano, very dedicated to my lessons, never missed a lesson, practiced more than anyone else in the studio, loved performing. And then junior and senior year of high school, I had, leadership roles in the marching band and other collaborative piano obligations within the school that I didn't really have time for lessons anymore. So I actually stopped taking lessons. And I'll never forget my senior year. I know my piano teacher was not happy with me because I didn't do a senior recital, but I didn't have time. But I was convinced that I wanted to do biochemistry in college. I wanted to do forensic science. I spent 2 years of high school really dedicating myself to preparing for that. And then it was kind of this light bulb moment when I was playing as the lead pianist for Grease the Musical. I was 17 years old, and we had days and days of rehearsals and shows. And in the middle of one of the shows, it was an epiphany, right? I just had this thought that I have to do this for the rest of my life. And that's when I contacted Mississippi State to change my major as an incoming freshman.
Yeah. So during that period, and I think I can be a little bit more personal this time, we met, and you want to be a performer. And I remember talking to you, and also because I think the idea, and this is also is happening with other students, is that the idea that I am a pianist, I'm going to be a performer, period. I don't like to teach. I will not teach. And I think that's what I heard from you. And I remember vividly telling you, how do you know you don't want to do it when you have never done it? And you said, no, I know it. And but then tell us a little bit more about your teaching experience and how you became a teacher and pedagogue that you are right now.
Absolutely. You are very correct that I was one of those students that refused to teach. I thought, I'm not cut out for this. I don't have the patience. I don't have the interest in it. And I was naive as an 18-year-old. I did not know my adult self enough to say that I don't have the patience for young students. But I do. My at-home studio is comprised mostly of elementary and middle school students. However, Rose offered me the opportunity to start teaching during my undergraduate career, and I said, okay, I will do whatever you say. And I immediately fell in love with teaching. But I think it's important that I note I could not have done that without a support system where I could be the teacher that didn't know anything. I could be the beginning teacher that was still figuring things out, that was still learning as a student herself. And so if I had not had that opportunity, I don't think that I would be where I am today.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm a proponent and I'm very strong about having community music schools or a prep school in any university. I think this environment not only motivates the community to take lessons, and if they are not an active musician, at least they will be the audience that we need, but also motivate students that are taking classes at the moment to become teachers, because you cannot have professionals if you don't have beginners. And that's and you cannot have an audience if you don't foster the idea of making music within the community. So I think the environment that you were talking about is the environment that other faculty with more experience will overlook young musicians to teach and give them the confidence and open the path for them for a future career, a different career that they never thought about. So, but that's not an interview about me. It's an interview about you. And I would like for you to also talk about the MTNA, which is the Music Teachers National Association, which you have strong ties with them, and also the Francis Clark Piano Institute, as well as the Piano Magazine. And so how did you get involved with MTNA?
With MTNA, I became a member in 2014, actually, under you, Rose, under your guidance. You say I had to be a member of this. And as I know many of us can relate, when your mentor and professor tells you to do something, you do it without question, and then you have the benefits of doing it. So I have been a member for almost 10 years and regularly attend national conferences. I have met many people that I wouldn't normally have access to. So pedagogical composers, researchers, pedagogues that I could meet in an elevator, right, at this conference in Nevada, where we were a couple months ago. I met people that if I did not become a member of this organization and take part, I would never have access to otherwise. So that's MTNA. I have presented posters, research posters. I have presented, I've submitted articles for publication, and I have spoken on panels that really encourage that community of not only music teachers, but beginning music teachers, so that we all feel supported and feel that it's okay to not be the best teacher right off the bat, right? You can ask those hard questions. You can ask the questions that you might think you shouldn't have to ask, right? So that you feel comfortable in that opportunity to reach out to those people. Now, with the Francis Clark Center for Keyboard Pedagogy, I am the manager of advertising. I work primarily with Piano Magazine. And Piano Magazine has offered me the opportunity to learn so many skills outside of being a teacher and a pianist, right? So there's skills that, again, I didn't know that I needed or wanted or would benefit me. For example,
So what are the skills that you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the more administrative things, so managing money, managing data. We all think that we can work Excel or a spreadsheet, and there's so much more that we can do. I have also had the opportunity to work with a lot of graphic design. I spent a year working their social media, so I was making hundreds of graphics over a course of several months. And I actually was given that opportunity. I started as a student intern. So I started as an intern in January 2020. 6 months prior to that, so July 2019, I received a call from the president of the Louisiana Music Teachers Association. So this is the state association associated with the national MTNA that we were speaking about earlier. And their advertising sponsorship chair had to take an unexpected leave of absence, and that left it completely open and responsibilities that needed to be taken care of. And because I was organized and dedicated, they thought, you could do this. I had no experience in advertising, no experience being a chair or on a board of this type of association. But because I exhibited those qualities, I was asked to do it. And I said, absolutely, I will step up and help my association that does so much for music teachers and piano teachers specifically. And because of that opportunity, I was then taken in as an advertising intern for the magazine. 6 months after that, I was the coordinator and now the manager of advertising. So I say that to say, take advantage of the opportunities offered to you.
Yeah, and this is something that long time ago, the idea of teaching, and I'm taking this opportunity for anybody that is listening to us, the idea of teaching was you are in a room, you teach the kid goes away, and that's it, right? The idea of having the knowledges that you were talking about did not exist. And also the same thing for faculty members. We would come, we would teach our classes, lessons, and leave. Lately, I think the career is changing. A professor or a teacher, that we have to have fundraising skills. We have to have ideas of how to interact with community, so community partnership, as well as knowledge of technology. And if you don't, you're going to be excluded, and it's not interesting at all. So this idea of making links and making connections with others is very important, but it's still not taught at the university. So that's what you're mentioning, right? You were given an opportunity, and then you took it, which is now leading to one part of your career. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think all those opportunities had led you for a higher education career or opportunity to teach, have a job?
I do. Primarily because I knew from experience that taking advantage of an opportunity offered would lead to more opportunities down the road, right? So had I not said yes to you that I would teach privately or through the community music school, I wouldn't become a teacher. I wouldn't have gotten my master's in piano pedagogy. And so when the university called me and said that they were looking for someone to take over the piano department, I said, okay, this seems like a good next step, even though I had never considered working on the collegiate level. I wanted to be a private piano teacher, an independent piano teacher. And again, I was naive in thinking that that was the only thing I would do. And so I think that it speaks to the idea of a portfolio career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have had really great mentors in that area of my life, really pushing the idea of this portfolio career from the very beginning. Portfolio career meaning that you're not just a performer, you're not just a teacher, you're not just a church musician. You have this wide array of abilities, responsibilities, and opportunities. And so now I am fortunate that I get to really take advantage of that and have so many of those qualities in my career.
And what is your responsibility at Southern University?
I am the coordinator of keyboard studies. So I handle all of the group piano classes, which all music majors are required to take 4 semesters of. So I handled that. I, as well as one of my colleagues, teach applied piano and handle any piano majors. I also am responsible for collaborating with at least half the department, students and faculty.
It's a job by itself, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Let me ask you, and this is something that is not very common in Brazil and not very common in South America, which is the idea of group piano teaching. And there are so many methods in the United States. There are so many different labs and technology applied to that, but it's very new in Brazil. The idea of having piano skills for every major and minor, it's new. So tell us more about what are the subjects and the end goal of a group piano.
The end goal of 4 semesters of group piano for a music major that is not a piano major. So they would be studying an instrument other than piano or be a vocalist. The goal for them is to be able to have functional skills at the piano. And what do I mean by that? I mean they can complete harmonization, so have a lead line and find chords underneath. They can transpose. They can improvise. So all of that requires extensive knowledge of chords, chord progressions, inversions, and comfortability in playing them at the piano. This will allow them to be more successful in their post-undergrad careers, whether they are a band director who needs to play a line of music for one of their students in their band. So if it's a saxophone, they would have to transpose it to play it on the piano. So they need to have that ability. If they're a choral director, they need to be able to warm up the choir. We're not always going to have a pianist around. Well, we will, but but others aren't that fortunate. So they need to have at least those basic skills of vocal warm up, reading a score of vocal music or band music, symphonic music. If they're going to go into composing, you know, we all know that most composing happens at a piano, at least the very beginning sketches of it. So giving them that functional skill while incorporating the harmony classes, the ear training and sight singing classes into one place, we see as essential to completion of a music major degree.
And what method are you currently using?
I use primarily Alfred's group piano. I know that's very popular here.
Mm-hmm.
I actually bring in a lot of outside sources and supplemental material because, you know, every text is just a beginning. I also know my students very well and know the population that I teach and know the type of activities that they like to participate in. And so I'll bring more of those into the classroom. I also will use innovative piano. Hopefully in the next year or two, my university will switch over to innovative piano.
Explain more about the innovative piano, please.
So innovative piano was created by Changkyat Lim and Susie Garcia. They're actually located here in Louisiana, but they have taken incredible pedagogical concepts and created this group piano curriculum that is entirely customizable to the teacher, to the department that is using that curriculum. This is done entirely online. So all of the musical examples, all of the choices that the teacher has are done via the website, which creates a lot of ease and customability, right? If you don't get to certain objectives in your lesson, you say, okay, we're going to move this to next week, instead of having to recopy or, make physical adjustments in your lesson plans. The other thing that that the innovative piano offers is the students have more opportunity to rewatch lessons or rewatch class instruction. They also have the opportunity to print the musical example, so it's not just online. And the creators of innovative piano have taken all of the things that I was speaking about earlier, the theory, the ear training, in addition to technique and improvisation, and really incorporated those so that every example or assignment that you'll give a student, you can see down below at the bottom of the page, these are the aspects of every category being met in this one assignment. So it's very good pedagogy, but it eases a lot of
The planning, probably,
yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. And so for those of us who are so busy, who have all those responsibilities, it's an incredible time saver.
Yeah, this is something also that is new in Brazil, which are the method books. It's sad to say that I grew up with a dozen a day. But in the United States, it has been a totally different publishing, as well as pedagogues, completely dedicated to group piano and some completely dedicated to elementary teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have Catherine Rowland, Melody Bobber, and so many others that Faber, and so many others that are just dedicated to development and composition of music for students to learn. For example, there's certain specific technique that they need to learn, and so they use music by American composers. So I also see that your interest is in female composers, right?
Yes.
You had published an article, right? Talk more about that, because I think right now we are in a time in society that we are trying to emphasize and give voice to those who never did, never had the opportunity. And so can you tell us more about your article and your focus?
Absolutely. So as a female pianist, it always bothered me that I was learning music by all of these male composers. It's fabulous music. I played it without hesitation, but where do I fit into that? So it's really great now that we have all of these pedagogical composers that you were just mentioning, Nancy Faber, Catherine Rowland, Melody Bober, but we didn't, as women, just all of a sudden start composing. So my master's thesis was on romantic female composers and leveling some of their music, their elementary music, for teachers to be able to use in their studios. From that, I chose one piece and said, this piece is great for these reasons and to identify and work on certain concepts within a lesson. So I chose a Norwegian folk song by Agathe Backer-Grundle, and she uses so many different rhythms, quarters, eighths, triplets, but uses them in a way combined with piano technique that they emphasize each other. For example, the triplets are often started, the first note of the triplets are an open fifth in the hand. So it's promoting a really nice, firm, supported hand position while working on rhythmic complexities. So she, was really taking all of that into account while making music and creating music that was fun and enjoyable to play. And so I really like to use her works in my studio because it's also, they're Norwegian, right? So, so apart from it being a female composer and something else that we can talk about in my studio, it's also rhythms that are not as common in the United States, tonalities that are not as common. And so it really exposes exposes my students to music that they wouldn't get in a standard curriculum.
See, I don't know this composer, and can you tell us more about her career, her biography, and let us know, because this is a time for us to also open subjects and opportunities for others that never heard about, to open their mind, and other opportunities for them to research and use in their profession as well.
Absolutely. So Grundle was, like I said, a romantic composer, and was kind of well known at the time, but a lot of that had to do with breaking barriers within the male-dominated organizations. For example, she played Grieg's concerto, and Grieg said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have Grieg's quote in front of me, but he said, this, I couldn't have had anyone better play this, right? And so to have someone speak as an advocate for her was incredibly influential and significant. However, she would still give comments such as, well, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, she is a great pianist for a woman.
Oh.
Not a great pianist, but as a woman. So she was really groundbreaking in a lot of ways, but also bringing Norwegian folk songs to the forefront, right? We have all played plenty of American folk songs, German folk songs, and these are all wonderful, wonderful cultures. But at the time, Norwegian folk songs were not written down as much, right? So she being able to publish those was very significant.
Is this the article that you published as a student and that opened the opportunity for you as well at Piano Magazine?
Yes. So again, this is kind of funny. I finished my master's degree the semester that COVID happened. So in March of 2020, we all know COVID happened. And so I had to finish my master's degree at home, which had its benefits, but a lot of things that were less than beneficial. But one of the things that it allowed me to do was really dive into certain things that, because I could just sit at my computer all day, right? So I finished my master's thesis the end of April, and my professor emailed me and said, hey, you should write an article for the Piano Magazine Collegiate Writing Competition. It's due in 2 days. What? So, but again, like I said, when your mentor, when your professor says do something, you say, okay. And so I got back to my computer and I wrote two drafts of the article. I'll say the first one was not great. But then after having my professor and other peers read it. I reworked it, submitted it, and it received first place in publication in the magazine.
All right. Can we, and again, I'm going to ask Andrea to open not the article, but the Piano Magazine website. And this is a website called Piano Inspires, right? And I think I'll let you talk more about this website as well as the Piano Magazine.
So Piano Inspires is the online hub or kind of central home for all of the opportunities and publications that the Francis Clark Center has to offer. One of those is Piano Magazine. Piano Magazine is also dedicated to encouraging young teachers to write. And so with the collegiate collegiate writing competition, students of all degrees, so it could be undergraduate, master's, or doctoral, are encouraged to submit an article, and it could be on any topic of your interest. It is also, once you are declared a winner or a runner-up, you go through the editorial process. So the editors of the magazine will walk you through any edits that need to be made, any musical examples that need to be created, and then you have your article in the magazine. So I think now we're looking at, yes, you can see the summer 2023 issue was just released. And you do not have to be a student or a top leading pedagogue even to submit an article for the magazine. Anybody can at any time. Thank you, Andrea. And the process is done. It's a blind peer review, a double blind review. Mm-hmm. So the people who were reviewing my work for consideration for publication had no idea who I was, and I have no idea who they were. So it's really it's a validating experience for my work to be seen as worthy of publication without my name attached to it.
Yeah, and also, and the magazine is the advertising also the NCKP annual conference, right? Which is next month in July, the end of July. And this is something, and as you can see, we have all sorts of main artists being on the front page, Jane McGraw and Amy Beach, and we had others as well. So tell us, the audience, more about the NCKP and what the term NCKP means, please.
So NCKP is the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy. It happens every 2 years. And so it is happening very excitingly in about a month. So this will be our return to the in-person conferences. Like I said, it happens every 2 years. And this is one of the only conferences of this size in the United States that is dedicated to piano pedagogy. So we have a huge lineup of concert artists, but also master teachers who are going to give teaching demonstrations. There will be keynote speakers. There will be what we call PEDX demonstrations. So it's kind of the TED Talk idea, but pedagogy. But there are presentations on every track that we call track. So it could be wellness, it could be recreational music making, collaborative piano, students with disabilities, that type of thing. So
I think I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think Olga Kern is going to give a recital, like the closing recital. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. We're very, very excited to have her as one of our concert artists.
Mm-hmm. And we have several other piano ped professors as well as major pianists. We have Tommy Karamir, we have Angelina Chang, We have the Niago performing as well. Cooperstock, I think several of them are going to be there. We do not have this type of conferences very often in South America. I know that there's an European pedagogy conference that it moves around the countries in Europe. Last year, I think it was in Portugal, and this year is in Rome, in Italy. But this is the largest piano pedagogy conference that we have. And in fact, I'm very proud to say that we have 3 students presenting a poster this year, and we had them also at MTNA. Very proud also the work that my colleague faculty Jenna Klein has been doing with them. So I think we have to make others aware of the opportunities in the United States. Since it is not a requirement to be American to present and to participate in those events and opportunities. So this is wonderful to know that you are not only publishing, you are teaching, you are becoming a manager. So how do you handle it all? Because we were talking at MTNA, we had dinner together, and we were talking about you have basically 5 jobs. Am I correct?
So I have 5 jobs on top of being a PhD student. I will say I drink a fair amount of coffee, but I also write everything down. I had to come up with my own system. And I know a lot of people who use online calendars and planners and agendas. I have to have everything in a physical planner. So I have multiple notebooks and agendas that I keep track of everything. I color code everything. But I make sure that every day I use my time wisely. But I also use my energy wisely. As a perfectionist, and I know most of us probably in this presentation are perfectionists as well, it's hard to not give 110% to everything you do. And part of managing this portfolio career was realizing not everything requires 110%. The forms I have to fill out, they don't require 100% of my full energy. They're easy. I do them, I get them done, check it off my list, and I move on, right? Whereas a lot of people, and including myself, could dwell on those small tasks. But also, as a student, I want to give every assignment, every reading I am given, everything I have. But if I do that for every assignment I'm given, I won't have any more to give. Mm-hmm. So I make a note of assignments that I want to go back to or suggested readings that I want to make sure I get to. And so I keep a running log of the things that I want to explore more or redo and those types of things, so that when I have more energy to spend, I can spend it at an appropriate time.
Yeah, one thing that I remember when you were working at MSU under the Community Music School, which I thought was a very, and I did not teach you that, but I thought it was a very good idea that you did for your students. At the time, you had like 23 students. Am I correct? Was that 23 or 33?
33.
33. There you go. 10 more. But I remember you, even the ones that were not that great, I remember that, and that you were struggling with, I remember that you had a recital where you gave them an award, the most inspiring or the most hard worker or the most communicative or something. And I saw some of them changing their focus or even changing their interest to more interested and more dedicated because of the positive feedback that you gave to them. So tell me more about that. Tell me more about that.
It's very hard as a teacher to not force a student into a certain path, right? You say, this is how it needs to be. These are the expectations I have for you, the standards that you must meet. But it's even harder to find individual students' strengths and weaknesses and use those to help the students grow, which does take a lot more time and effort and attention to individual students. I am a firm believer in that everybody can make music. Not everyone's going to be the best and most technically proficient pianist, but that's not my goal as a piano teacher, right? If a student is on that track, I will get them there and they will be however great they want to be, and I will work with them. But they are no more significant in my studio than the kid who doesn't have a lot of time to practice or doesn't dedicate as much time of their week to practice. Because if they still come to this lesson, are enjoying what they're doing, they are progressing in some type of way. Maybe they're not flying through the repertoire. Maybe they are not scoring perfectly on a theory exam. But if they're enjoying what they're doing and progressing as a human being and as a musician, then I've done my job. If they are more confident as a person, if they know more about themselves, their learning processes, their interests, then I've done my job.
It's the idea of making music not only for the professional musician, but for everybody, making music part of their lives in emphasis. So it's funny to ask you to talk more about it, but there is one subject that I didn't have the chance to talk or ask you about it, but is when we were talking about group piano and the methods and all, but it's the importance nowadays of a study of eye tracking that has been happening in the United States. I was in Vancouver when they presented a topic, and I think was the University of Quebec that was now with a lab that was doing eye tracking. Here in Mississippi State, we do have an eye tracking lab, but it's funny because I'm trying to incorporate in our music department, but they are more towards the psychology and the psychology of mechanical engineer, which is tracking the eyes of drivers so they can improve cars and technology. So tell me more about what has been done or what you know about the eye tracking for sight reading.
So the idea of teaching sight reading is a very popular topic right now. Teachers, I have found in my experience speaking with teachers that they don't have a strategy for teaching sight reading. They open a sight reading book and they put it in front of a student and say, go.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the eye tracking software will help researchers, educators, teachers know what people are looking at ahead of time in the sight reading process to hopefully take it all the way back and be able to better teach sight reading. So, we always say, look forward, make sure that you're looking forward. But to be able to see what people are actually looking at, are they looking at notes? Are they looking back to the key signature and back to the notes? To try to register in a way kind of anticipation of mistakes or reaction to mistakes. And so all of this can kind of be done just by tracking eye movements and seeing what people are focusing on.
There's also a huge amount of research in how people perceive what they read, which is more physical when you read the scores and they physically see their hands on the keyboard instead of just reading the notes in a very abstract concept, which is, I've noticed that even with my students, they are tracking, but it's an abstract concept. They know G is G, but they don't know where G is and which finger to use the G. So those who visualize as they read, they do better. And it's a very interesting idea, which not always this topic is emphasized in some of the teaching in other countries. For me, it was a surprise when people said, didn't you have sight reading classes in Brazil? And at the time, I said, no. And I do believe that they are incorporating that in the curriculum, but it's not as important or emphasized as it is in the United States. But again, it's the idea of making yourself functional, not only a pianist, but functional keyboardist. Sarah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, but give us your thought about or your advice to a young musician, a young pianist or musician in general, or what is the advice you would give to yourself as a young a young Sarah? Because there are a lot of musicians listening, and the idea of success is still being a great performer, performing in Carnegie Hall with the major orchestras, or being this great recording artist. And there's so much nowadays in music that we can be extremely successful. And you are one of the cases. And we can, as you said, the portfolio is big and wide. So can you give them an advice?
Absolutely. So advice number 1, say yes. Learn to say no, of course, because then you'll have too many responsibilities. But the thing you think you're not qualified for, or the opportunity that you think, I've never really been interested in that, see what happens. I had no experience in advertising, and now I'm the manager of advertising for a magazine and NCKP. But I also serve my state association in that way. So I'm serving other music teachers because I said yes. Right. So it's not just I'm learning all of these incredible skills, but I'm serving my community. The other thing that I will say is that a portfolio career can seem scary, but it's so worth it. If I'm able to engage, let's back up. I have a private studio where I teach young students. I teach college students at the university. And I teach an older population as the choir director and pianist at 2 churches. So I'm engaging so many age groups, so many interests, so many musical genres. Between all of that, between being a collaborative pianist with faculty members, so I'm playing a lot of classical music, a lot of new music, a lot of church music, those are opportunities that I would not have necessarily had if I had just said, I'm going to be a concert pianist. That is it. So I hope that I am influencing my community in a way that everyone enjoys being a musician and being an audience member and an advocate for music.
So in the case of, do you see yourself doing something else that you have not done it yet? Or is there something that you say, I haven't done this, but I want to do it? And what would that be?
Well, part of that is my PhD. I just started it in this past January. So I actually just finished my summer classes today. Whoop, whoop. So I think with the PhD, I chose the PhD as opposed to the DMA because I want to focus on my teaching at the university, where I'm teaching future music educators. So I'm still teaching future musicians, but also future music educators. And so that's a realm that I hope to really be able to focus on and be influenced by, as well as influence, and for future generations.
So in the case of publishing, is there anything in your mind in having a method book, or because you were always very creative, extremely creative? And I remember I think it was during the time that you won the competition to play with the orchestra that we decided to do the Kabalevsky. And when I explained to you that he composed mainly for the pedagogue, as a pedagogue that he was, and you had all these ideas, and is there anything related to that type of career?
Maybe. I, with, how many aspects to my career there currently are, there are that many aspects in each of them that I'm interested in. So I'm extremely interested in the concept of teaching sight reading, but also teaching sight reading in terms of church music, right? Because that's another avenue that my students can have for revenue even, right? Church pianists are in high demand. Case in point, I'm a director at two churches, right? So that's something I'm extremely interested in. I'm also interested in kind of reworking how the United States views group piano classes at the college level, because many of them are so focused on technique that our music majors aren't using after they graduate, when there are so many other skills that I think are more important, or more immediately beneficial. And so I hope to continue my work in those areas, but also through my PhD, be able to do research and publish hard facts and data to support my hypothesis that these are important things.
Yeah, for those who are watching, we have right now in Mississippi a region where all the public schools will have a piano lab, and also we'll be interacting with our piano lab here. And we have cameras, we have ways of teaching our students how to teach piano lab. And the idea of piano lab is to make, as we've been talking about, to make the musician with functional skills at the keyboard, but also to make it available. One thing that you mentioned that is something not tapped yet in South America, which is the elder or elderly, or the age group where the retirees that are now wanting to have lessons and want to learn something that they never had the opportunity, which is something that you do in your church, which is teaching them how to read music. It's the third age. Is that how they're called, right? Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. It makes my heart full when I see you developing as a wonderful musician and pedagogue, and to know that I'm watching you. And even though we were not talking to each other for 5 years because we were so busy with other things, but to now see you as the musician that you are. So it is wonderful to have Sarah Jenkins here with us, a young pedagogue and young musician with such a very successful career already, and with an even more successful future. So thank you very much for being with us and accepting the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for your years and years of mentorship and guidance for me in my career.
You're welcome. Andrea.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sebba, Dr. Sarah. Amazing interview. Thank you very much for sharing with us everything about music and about your career. Thank you. Esse é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Reitoria Digital, Pro-Reitoria de Extensão e Cultura da Universidade Federal de Goiás. Todas as semanas, um convidado muito interessante para trazer inspiração, na verdade, tanto para os alunos de música, como para os profissionais, como para pessoas de todas as áreas que gostam de saber, né, de todos esses bastidores que acontecem em uma carreira que é bem sucedida. Muito obrigada a todos vocês. Le Piano and its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts Digital Department and Provost of Culture of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidad del Atlántico, Colombia, and Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the New University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária, and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Sebba, and Yamira Nunes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. Thanks so much to all of you for the audience. See you next week.